season. Join us as we bring you powerful stories from both new and established Southern authors as we sit by the river.
Tuesdays at 9 p.m.
Classical Stretch the Esmond Technique is a full-body fitness program designed to help you lose weight, slenderize your body, relieve pain, and increase your energy. Whether you're 30 or 60, this scientifically designed strengthening and flexibility program will improve your posture, prevent injuries, and best of all, slow down the aging process. Join me for a Classical Stretch workout.
Sundays at 7:30 a.m. on WLAE. We're local and entertaining. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams as we do each and every week here on this program. Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans, all that on tap for us. And we have one of the best in the business joining us today. Les East of CrescentCitySports.com, also again Saturday Down South, and of course an accomplished author as well. Les, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be back.
Good to have you. I love the sticker, by the way.
Thank you. That, of course, is for our friend Ed Daniels.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, there are high school football helmets all over the metro area sporting
with those stickers, right? Yeah, that's awesome. That really is. Great tribute to a great guy and an incredible journalist as well. Before we get started, tell the folks about the book, how folks can follow you on social media, and also, again, the publication you're involved in.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. The book is called Donkeys, Elephants, and Giraffes. It's a novel about politics and the media and sports to some degree. And it's available at all the major online platforms, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Folks can follow me on Facebook. I'm on X at Les_East. And of course, in addition to Crescent City Sports, I write for Saturday Down South, covering LSU and sometimes the SEC at large.
Beautiful. Let's get started with the New Orleans Saints. What has transpired as we are taping this show on a Wednesday. What transpired yesterday, which was again the extension for Alvin Kamara, 2 years, $24.5 million, $22 million of that fully guaranteed. About 68% of the deal again that he will definitely get. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's good that they got it done. I think it's a fair deal. It's a little unusual, I think, when somebody's in his situation with 1 year left on the contract next year, which is never going to be fulfilled under those terms. So he's essentially entering the last year. Usually, if that doesn't get done by the start of training camp or at least the start of the regular season, it doesn't get done till after the season. So the fact that it happened in October was a little bit surprising to me. I think it's good. You know, the first thing I thought of with the timing was, you know, the trade deadline's a couple of weeks away. The Saints could be sellers at the deadline. Alvin might want to go to a team that's got better prospects in the short term.
Agreed.
So it'll be easier to move him if his future is settled with a reasonable contract. So that could have nudged the two sides closer together and explain the timing of the deal.
Right.
Maybe they just got the deal done. I don't know. But that was the first thing that occurred to me, because the timing is a little bit unusual for it to get done in October.
I agree 100%. One of the first things I thought about was easier to trade a player if he's under contract for 2 years than a player that has a $25 million dummy year on the contract, which will never be fulfilled.
Right.
And from that standpoint, and of course, look, all the rumors that were out there this past week after the Bronco game, again, rumors that again have been debunked, by the way, that Kamara was asking Peyton to get him out of New Orleans. You know, and also again, when you look at it from the Saints standpoint, you know, this is also, again, money they can utilize down the line to be able to, again, open up more cap room if necessary, the way the deal is structured, with, again, $22 million of that guaranteed. So, again, that's guaranteed money that, again, since they do kick the can down the road, that, again, that's more money they can utilize for that. I am a little surprised, though. $11 million a year is about right for a running back, but he'll be 30 and 31 again for when that deal kicks in. Look, I've always said he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him because of, again, his collegiate career going from Alabama to Tennessee. The way he runs, again, he doesn't really get clean hits, although we've seen him get some clean hits lately. But with that said, you know, I still think he's got something left in the tank.
I don't think there's any question about that, and that could have been another factor in the deal getting done, is that the Saints probably were, in the back of their minds, were wondering, is he on the downward slope? The last couple of years have not been quite as productive for him. He was banged up a little bit during that time, but early in the season, when everybody around him was healthy, he looked like the old Alvin Kamara, and he was a huge part of the success they had at the beginning of the season. So I think he demonstrated that he's still a very, very good player, and with the way he takes care of himself, the creative ways in which he works in the off season to stay at his best and add something new to his regimen, I think suggests he can play longer than the average person that's his age. So I wouldn't put anything past Alvin that he sets his mind to. And fulfilling this contract at a high level, I think, is realistic. And in his own mind, he probably thinks this is not his last contract.
Right. This is a mini bye week. Maybe they were able to get this thing done because Calvin said he wasn't talking about contract during the season. Maybe the mini bye week gave him a little of an opening to maybe, again, dot some I's and cross some T's. You know, we talked about the possibility of maybe a trade, not necessarily this trade deadline, but let's say, again, there is a change in the organization, and he also becomes a trade chip at the end of the season if ultimately they want to move him because he's under contract through 2026. The other thing, again, that I thought about, just me knowing the New Orleans Saints as I do, again, perfect time to put a deflection out there about, again, 5 in a row, losing 5 in a row, get a Saint that is beloved, under contract, and have that to be, again, the big talker for at least one or two news cycles.
Yeah, and that's definitely the case. I tend to think that that's more lagniappe than a driving force in this.
I love that, by the way, lagniappe.
I don't think they were sitting around saying, we're in a 5-game losing streak. Sean Payton just beat our butts.
Right. He's trying to steal our running back.
Give Alvin whatever he wants.
Give him the $22 million.
Yeah. So I don't think that was the catalyst, but I think they probably felt like, boy, this would be a good way to talk about something positive for a couple of days before we go out to L.A. and play the Chargers.
Although there are some detractors, right, that look at the Saints cap situation and say, what are you doing? He's a 30 or 31-year-old running back by the time this contract kicks in. You should be shedding salary. You should be, again, dumping players that have some value and again, trying to be able to rebuild this franchise. There are some that have taken that angle on it. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that can still be accomplished if they manage to make a trade.
Absolutely.
So, you know, they're not mutually exclusive. So, you know, he's one of their most important players still.
Yes.
they haven't given up on this season. I know a lot of people have, but the Saints haven't. So, and I think they're figuring if we get this thing straightened out, we don't have to blow this thing up at the end of the year, and Alvin will be an important part going down the road if there is not a trade. So, you know, I think it made sense for everyone involved to get this deal done fairly and quickly.
I agree. Saints also, again, had another signing this week. They signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 6'4", 200-pound receiver, 30 years old, 7-year vet, played 98 games in the NFL with the Packers, Chiefs, and Bills. Saints have tried to sign him 2 previous times when he was a free agent. He ended up signing with the Chiefs and Bills, respectively. Bills released him after they traded for Amari Cooper. Your thoughts on this signing?
Well, they had to do something at wide receiver. They lost Rashid Shaheed for the whole year. Chris Olave is in the concussion protocol. They didn't have much depth there to begin with. Didn't have a lot of options on the roster. I think they showed interest in Devontae Adams, weren't able to get that deal done. So I think they felt like they had to do something. They wanted to get a veteran receiver. It was someone who obviously had caught their eye previously.
Right.
He was unemployed, so he wasn't going to cost them a great amount. They weren't going to have to give compensation. So it makes sense. I don't think it's a difference maker in any way, but they had to find a wide receiver somewhere, and that makes sense.
Yeah. When you look at, hopefully again, we'll talk about the injuries in a moment, but he comes from a West Coast system, so the ramp up for him should be fairly quick. When you look at, again, terminology may be a little bit different, but again, the playbook's similar, but yet a little bit different when you look at all the variations of the West Coast.
Yeah, I think so. They will probably have to limit what he's able to do initially. You know, he's not going to know the whole playbook when they play the Chargers, but he should be able to suit up on Sunday.
He should know the concepts at the very least.
Yeah, and they can, you know, they're going to give him materials to study for several days leading up to the game, so he understands the terminology and what's expected of him. So I don't think he'll have any problem playing significant snaps on Sunday if they think that's going to help them, and then gradually he'll get more and more up to speed. So I don't see that being much of an issue.
It's the second week in a row they picked up a wide receiver. Last week it was Pettis, again another kid that was again in a West Coast system as well. 2 starters go to injured reserve. Rashid Shaheed, as you mentioned, with the knee injury, and of course Adebo with a broken leg. Jonathan Abram, Chris Reed were again terminated from their practice squad contracts. Roger Teamer, former Tulane Green Wave player, and Shamar John Charles, both these guys were in camp, the Saints, during training camp, have been signed again to the practice squad. Let's talk about this week, and then I want to talk a little about injuries. First of all, it looks as though maybe Derek Carr may not go. Throwing sessions on Tuesday and on Monday and Tuesday. Today will be the first day that we'll find out what his designation is as far as the game is. They're talking about going with Rattler instead of Haener. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with the way they've handled the injury. When he went down against Kansas City, of course, Haener was the number 2. He had to go in, but they chose him to be the number 2. And I thought that made sense because he's been in the league for a year. He's probably a little mature in the system, not this system, but in an NFL offense, and knows some of the players around him. So in a sudden change situation, I think he made more sense.
Okay.
I think when you had a week to get ready for someone to start the game, I think Rattler made more sense because I think he's more of a playmaker. And I don't think Clint Kubiak's nature or Dennis Allen's nature is to be passive. And I think they felt like they could be more aggressive offensively and utilize the playmaking ability of Rattler more so. And with the time to prepare for a game, I thought that made sense. Obviously, his performance the first 2 weeks has been inconsistent. Been some good things, been some rookie things. He's been limited by the injuries around him.
Agreed.
And so I could understand them reconsidering that after 2 games, but I think for stability's sake and to continue to try and build with Rattler, I think if Carr doesn't go, and I think that's the likely thing, I would stick with Rattler, and I don't have any criticism of how they've handled the backup quarterbacks.
For me, he's behind a UFL offensive line. And again, that offensive line may get better this week. We'll talk about that in a moment with guys coming back from injury. But I think we've seen Rattler over 2 weeks. I think we have seen, again, the type of player maybe he could be in the future. We've also seen his shortcomings as well. Again, the ability to be able to scramble, get out of trouble, is obviously a huge attribute. Teams now are game planning him. They understand, again, keep him in the pocket, put pressure on him, and again, he's going to have a tough time getting the ball out to his receivers. Doesn't really understand what a hot read is. Again, he's a one read guy, and normally, again, at that point you would say go, but sometimes there's not room to go. Both guys are in the offense about the same amount of time, but Haener has been in the league obviously a year longer.
Right.
I'm not basing anything on what he did in that last series because, again, that was against backups, and it is what it is. But I would have liked to have seen Haener again this week and maybe next week if Carr doesn't go, simply because, again, he gets the ball out quicker, seems to have maybe a little bit more of a command of the offense, and I would like to see what he looks like under pressure as well.
I don't disagree with any of that. I think you can make a reasonable case for either choice. I lean toward Rattler because he's, I think, more of a playmaker.
Agreed.
And he's been out there for 2 games, and I think the players are getting used to him. I think he does a good job of understanding the situation and having the body language you want a leader to have. Not that Haener doesn't have it,
right,
but he's been establishing that for 2 weeks now. But I could see changing things up with Haener, seeing what he can do, because both of these guys, you're wondering long term, what do we have here? And it would be an opportunity to get a better gauge of Haener. But, we've seen Rattler for 2 weeks. The coaches have seen off-season, training camp, practice, and they've broken down that film and analyzed this a lot more than we have. They went with Rattler initially as the starter. I think that's probably who they'll stick with if they have to make that choice.
I agree.
So I would tend to defer to what they've been able to see that we haven't been able to see. But I think it comes down to playmaking and continuity.
Let's talk about Derek Carr for a moment. Again, as we mentioned, was in throwing sessions this week, again with the oblique injury, trying to come back. We're going to see possibly again Ruiz and Patrick come back this week on the offensive line. Again, we don't know if they're rushing them back because, again, it's pretty obvious that they need, again, a triage for that offensive line right now. My thought process is I'm staying with the young players. I'm not putting Carr behind that offensive line, or an offensive line that, again, doesn't have at least, again, a few starters coming back. And the main reason is, again, we saw last year how Carr performed when he was injured. I don't want to put him in a situation where, again, he's having to get the ball out quickly because of the checkdowns, because he doesn't want to get hit because of the injury. He's not Brett Favre, he's not Bobby Hebert in terms of, again, the handling the physicality of the position, in my opinion. And you don't want to be in a sit and duck in the pocket with, again, a porous offensive line. That's why, again, to me, Rattler or Haener is the best option until the offensive line comes back at least, mostly healthy. What are your thoughts?
Well, I understand what you're saying about the offensive line. I think it comes down to if Carr is healthy enough to make the plays he needs to make, I bring him back. And I understand. And it would be great if Cesar Ruiz, especially, is able to come back this week without rushing him back.
Right, that's the other thing, rushing him back.
Yeah, and I think they've been pretty cautious with all these guys. I don't think they're going to rush him back.
That's their MO, right? They'd rather take their time with the player than try to rush him back. But they are in dire straits right now.
They are in dire straits, and we don't know if Cesar is ready to play. We'll know more later in the week. But you have to take into account the offensive line situation. But I think the bottom line is if Carr is capable of making the plays, he gives us the best chance to win.
I agree with that.
We'll deal with the offensive line that we put out there. I think that's what the decision is. And I don't know that Derek is going to be ready this week. And they may have to. And then next week, I think hopefully you have a whole bunch of people back.
Right.
And of course, Taysom Hill's return would be huge for whoever the quarterback is.
Agreed.
So we'll see what happens. But I think the Carr decision comes down to whether he's physically capable of doing what he needs to do.
You know, and I thought that we've had a little bit of a blueprint of that last season. Carr tried to play through the injury. Jameis Winston sitting on the sidelines. They don't go to him, and there was a little bit of a struggle there. So, you know, to me, I want him as healthy as possible. And more importantly, I want that offensive line at least to get some starters back before I put him back. It'll be interesting to see again how long he is out, especially now that he is throwing. So we'll see again how that works out. You mentioned it. Olave in concussion protocol. A chance that Taysom may come back this week. Werner is supposedly progressing well. Interesting situation at the cornerback position where now with Adebo going to injury reserve, Taylor will now be the starting outside cornerback with, again, Kool-Aid moving to the nickel position. I'm sorry, Kool-Aid would not play nickel. Kool-Aid would move to the outside corner when they go to, again, the nickel, and Taylor moves back to the nickel. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is a byproduct of Alontae Taylor thriving thus far in that nickelback situation. And so they don't want to disrupt that. I think they have confidence in Kool-Aid, wherever they played inside or outside. But I think rather the simple explanation is you take the older guy, put him in the starting cornerback spot, and move the rookie into the situational spot. But I think in this case, Taylor has done so well in that spot as a pass rusher as well as in pass coverage that they say, let's not mess with that. That's one of the few things that's worked pretty well for the defense over the course of the season. We trust Kool-Aid on the outside. So I think that's the thought process that went into it, and I don't disagree with it.
And look, they have an abundance of talent at the cornerback position. And of course, so again, Adebo, who again had his issues with, again, infractions, pass interference, holding, but still was one of the leaders in the NFL with interceptions with 3. Again, it'll be interesting to see again what it looks like. I'm not anticipating a big drop-off there in terms of, again, losing Adebo and either bringing in Taylor or Kool-Aid, but we'll see how that works out. All right. I want to go back to the game against the Broncos, 33-10. What happened in the Dome? 389 yards of total offense given up, 255 yards of rushing given up by the defense, 502 yards rushing given up by the Saints defense over, again, a 4-day period in 2 games, 1,043 yards given up in the last 3 games by the defense. Injuries are somewhat of an excuse for the offense, but not so much for the defense. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree totally with that. Pete Werner's missed 2 or 3 games now. Yes. He's a big piece.
Huge.
That's a factor. Adebo going forward will be a significant loss. Will Harris was playing well before he got hurt. So they've been a factor, but they have not been an inordinate factor like they've been on the offense, like you said. The defense, there are a couple of things here. The one that I think the genesis of this is the game against Philadelphia. They got exposed there.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of, the first 2 games, they got up big early. And both the Panthers and the Cowboys had to scramble to try and catch up and weren't able to stick with the running game as much as they would like to. The Eagles were able to do that, and I think they exposed what we all thought was going to be a concern, which was the interior of the defensive line, the run defense as a whole. Yes. And so not playing with a 3-touchdown lead the whole game, the Saints weren't able to defend the Eagles' running game because the Eagles pounded it at them more often. Right. And I think that got on film, that exposed them, and that's happened consistently since then because that's where they're vulnerable and it's obvious to the whole league.
Right.
Now, the thing I can't explain is how they're not just getting beat at the point of attack, They have players missing tackles.
Right.
And I don't understand. They have guys who've made tackles for years. They've made tackles the first 2 games, and now they're missing tackles. And, you know, I hear Dennis Allen and Joe Woods give explanations, and I'm sure this is true. You know, there are a lot of factors. Guys aren't being disciplined, or they're taking the wrong angle, and their fundamentals and such. And I'm sure you can look at those and find different things on different plays from different players. But how do you just stop tackling well when you were tackling well? I have no explanation for that.
And I don't either. And the other part of this is, again, it's week 7 of an NFL season. Well, I mean, how did you lose your fundamentals?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, at what point, again, did you stop taking the right angle? You know, again, that's why, again, look, there were times over the last few weeks where, again, the effort has been questioned, and rightly so.
Well, yeah, I think late in the last couple of games.
Yes.
And I don't know how much of that is effort, how much of that is fatigue.
Fatigue, okay.
Okay, I think Tampa Bay.
3 games in 10 days?
3 games in 10 days. In Tampa, they were on the field a lot.
Yes, they were.
Especially in the second half.
Yes, they were.
So I think fatigue and knowing the game is lost can make it look like you've quit when you're still actually doing the best you can under very bad circumstances. Another thing that will be brought up as a potential factor in the bad tackling is that because the way the CBA has evolved in recent years, you don't tackle as much in practice, training camp, in regular season, hardly at all in regular season. So teams aren't as adept, especially early in the year, at tackling.
True.
But I don't know that that's a league-wide problem to the degree that it is in New Orleans.
Right.
So that doesn't excuse one team from having that problem. So again, that might be a factor to some degree. But I don't have an adequate explanation for why the tackling has been so bad by so many people for so many games.
You know, Les, for me, and I won't say I saw it coming, but I saw it coming because, again, because of the salary cap limitations that they have, they did not address the interior of the defensive line. They went out last year and got 2 backups in Shepard and Saunders, who were coming off their best years as pros, thought they could plug and play those guys, and they were going to be able to be starting NFL tackles. Brazil comes in as a rookie. Again, you've seen him, again, grow as a player, but he's really not a run-stuffing interior defensive lineman. When you look around the league and the proliferation of former Saints interior defensive linemen, and then again what they have on the roster now, you kind of look at it and say, okay, that is a position of all the positions they should have upgraded, and maybe they felt a little too comfortable based on what they did last year against some really bad teams down the stretch. So, and now, with the salary cap the way it is, nobody's giving away defensive tackles in this league. Again, it's going to be very difficult to shore that up. It'll be interesting to see again how that works. Now, look, obviously Demario Davis getting injured with a hamstring probably had an issue there. Also, again, you mentioned Pete Werner, but again,
Saunders missed some time early.
Absolutely,
also.
Saunders missed time early. But to me, it is again not upgrading that position in the offseason, which is also a byproduct of what we're seeing now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think we all agreed going into free agency, defensive tackle needed to be a priority.
Right.
And coming out of free agency, it was not addressed to a significant degree. I don't know how much of that was economics. I don't know how much of that was maybe them being misguided by what they did down the stretch last year, like you said. Probably multiple factors involved, but that needed to be addressed. It was clear it needed to be addressed, and it was not addressed adequately, and we're seeing the results of that.
Losing to Sean Payton as they did 33-10, and of course the ripple effect of what we've seen in the fan base, what's going on with the team. They were able to get away for a couple days. Look, they're severely injured. I mean, again, they may be the most injured team in the NFL. So again, I think it's difficult to turn this thing around and say they're going to turn this thing around very, very quickly until they start to get players back. But is the season lost in your opinion?
No, I don't think it's lost, but there are 2 elements here that have to be addressed. One is And again, I may have a different answer if they lose Sunday, and certainly if they lose at Carolina.
Yes.
But as we sit here today at 2-5, 5 straight losses, you can look at it and say the NFC South is not great. Nobody has more than 4 wins. The schedule is a lot more manageable over the next several weeks. The opponents aren't that great. There's no 3 games in 11 days. They're coming off a mini bye. Guys are going to get healthy. Turning this around on paper is doable. Then you look at the injury situation, guys who are not coming back, guys who won't be back yet. Eric McCoy is not going to be back Sunday.
November.
It's going to be a while, and that's where this whole thing started. He is so important.
I agree.
And other guys. Carr is probably not going to play this week. Taysom Hill may not play. There's so many of them. So you look at it on the standings and the schedule and the math, and you say, well, this is still doable with 10 games left. And then you look at the personnel, and you say, is it doable with this group of players? I don't know if it is doable, but I think it's a week-to-week thing. If they win somehow on Sunday, and that's not impossible, the Chargers are not great. They're good on defense, not so good on offense. Short week for them.
Yes.
So if you win that, things start to look a little different. You should be able to beat Carolina, though that's not guaranteed. Then you come home, your next 3 games are at home with the bye thrown in there. So the next 2 weeks, beginning with the game Sunday, they really need to win that game Sunday. So it's doable, and it may look better after this weekend. But boy, I just don't know what the ceiling is with the personnel that they have.
Final question for you. Do you see a scenario at some point, if this thing continues to be a downward spiral, where there are changes in season on the coaching staff?
Yeah, it's possible. I think the only way that would happen would be during the bye week. That would be the logical time to make it, when you have more time for a transition. And I think that would require losing most, if not all, of the games going into the bye week. I don't think that's likely to happen. I don't think this is going to completely fall apart. Now, we'll see. If they come out Sunday and look like they have a hangover from the Broncos game and lay an egg and get blown out again, I'll have a different answer for you. But now, I think unless it continues to snowball very badly going into the bye week, that's the only way I see a change being made in season.
Well, again, that goes against their DNA. Okay, I mean, it's not something they do. So it would have to be, again, a huge just collapse. But again, to me, if there are going to be changes even made in the off season, there has to be a hard look at the entire organization from top down. Okay, this is not a Dennis Allen issue. This is again an organizational issue that starts with Mickey Loomis all the way down. And again, not looking at the totality of what's going on in the organization would be very short-sighted.
Yeah, and I think what would happen, assuming there's not a dramatic, unexpected, positive turnaround, is this all starts with Mickey Loomis.
Absolutely.
Gail Benson is not going to fire Mickey Loomis. And I think he's earned the right to decide how this gets fixed. And that starts with him making the decision, do I want to be the guy who's hands-on in trying to fix this? Or do I want to step back a bit, bring in a younger person, either from within or without, let them take on that day-to-day, hands-on fixing of this situation, or do I want to ride off into the sunset? I've done a great deal for this organization, probably more than any other front office member other than maybe Jim Finks in the history of the franchise. Do I want to just do that? Have I had enough of this? And those are 3 viable options, and I think it will be his choice. And everything after that will be trickle down. But I don't see Gail Benson firing him.
Neither do I.
It's up to him to decide what to do. And I think Mickey has an objective sense of where he is in his career and what's left to be accomplished and what he wants to do. Now, I don't think he's made a decision in that regard at all, but I think when it comes time, I think he's going to be able to make an objective decision. Am I the right guy to lead this rebuilding,
Right.
if that's what is necessary.
Looks like it.
Or is my role going to be smaller, or perhaps even I step aside?
Right.
I think that he's going to have to do a lot of reflection, and I'm sure he will, and I suspect he'll make the right decision.
Les East, CrescentCitySports.com, Saturday Down South is our guest. I'm Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. You'll hear from our underwriters. We come back. LSU, Tulane, Pelicans on tap. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Les East is our guest. All right, let's start with LSU. 6-1, winners of 5 in a row, 3-0 in the SEC, 7th in the coaches poll, 8th in the AP. They're at 14th ranked Texas A&M this weekend. They're 6-1. They're 4-0 in the SEC. That is again a nationally televised game Saturday night, 6:30 here in New Orleans on ABC. So that'll be on WGNO. LSU, again, coming off the win at Arkansas, big win, using the short passing game to really, again, do the Razorbacks in. Too many field goals, made more, again, with Ramos, but again, he was outstanding with 47 and 48 yarders. To me, again, the big drawback from that game, if you can be critical, is the pre-snap penalties. There were 10, I believe, of the 11 penalties that the Tigers were hit with for minus 80 yards. But the defense continues to get better each and every week, and we're seeing this, again, creating 3 turnovers, 3 sacks against a pretty darn good quarterback in Green, who, again, I got a tremendous amount of respect for. Held Arkansas to 38 yards rushing. Whit Weeks has become a superstar for the LSU Tigers at the linebacker position. Give me your thoughts on the state of the LSU Tigers.
Well, first of all, if I'd come to you before the season and said that on October 26th, LSU and Texas A&M would be playing to decide the last team unbeaten in SEC play, what would you have said?
I want to look at your cup and see what's in it.
And rightfully so. It's amazing, but that's where we're at. Whoever wins this game is looking down at the rest of the SEC. Yeah, the defense, the turnaround on the defense has been the single biggest thing. Yeah, Whit Weeks had a game for the ages. I just wonder if somehow the absence of Harold Perkins is somehow involved in this. Whether it's just Weeks rising to the occasion and saying somebody has to fulfill that role, I'm going to be the guy, or if it's more X's and O's oriented. I don't know, but I don't think that's a coincidence. But he's played well in the past.
Yes.
He's just gotten better and better and better.
He's been dominant now, though.
Yeah. That game against Arkansas
9 tackles, a sack, an interception, a pass breakup. I mean, he was doing it all.
It was tremendous. And but the defense as a whole, I still think they're a little bit susceptible to big plays, but I mean, that's going to happen, especially when you're as aggressive as they are. You're going to have to live with a few big plays here and there. But the performance against Arkansas was great. The performance against Ole Miss was really good.
Absolutely.
It's really, since you can almost go back to, I guess, the second half against UCLA, the defense has been steadily improving since then, and so I think we're starting to see why they hired Blake Baker. He's figuring out how the scheme and the talent fit together better than maybe he did early on. And what's interesting about this matchup to me is that LSU throws the ball better than it runs it. A&M runs it better than it throws it.
Yeah.
LSU's bigger weakness on defense is its pass defense, which is not A&M's strength.
Right.
A&M's biggest weakness on defense is its run defense, which is not LSU's biggest strength on offense. So it's going to be interesting to see who can be best at what is not their strength. I think that's what's going to make the difference. And I think the wild card in that is Caden Durham.
Yes.
Because I think LSU's running game right now is better than its seasonal stats because Durham is coming on so strong. And I think LSU has the better quarterback also.
Different team than we saw early in the year. 11 freshmen playing last week against Arkansas, and again in prominent roles. And these are young guys that again maybe don't have a lot of experience, but are very, very talented. And it takes a lot of guts to be able to put those guys on the field with so much on the line for Brian Kelly. But again, I've been calling for it. I'm glad to see it. And here's the other part of it. 11 freshmen, right? But no hangover from the Ole Miss game. And that says something, again, for this team, again, to be totally focused coming off of a game like that, the emotion of that game, beating a ranked team, really kind of setting yourself up, moving in, again, a little bit further in the top 10, and then, of course, again, going into Arkansas and taking care of business like they did.
Yeah, that was really impressive. You know, a lot of people thought that was the, quote, trap game.
Right.
And I understood the danger in it because it was such an emotional game against Ole Miss. Arkansas has had some really good moments this year. I think Sam Pittman's a good coach, even though he's on the hot seat. It's a tough place to play.
Yes.
So for all those reasons, I could have seen that being a really difficult game, potentially even an upset loss, and LSU just went in and dominated.
Yeah.
That was extremely impressive.
Well, again, you mentioned Durham, 21 carries, 101 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jackson showed some physicality finally, 5 carries for 30 yards. Nuss was accurate, again, hitting 9 different receivers, even though he didn't throw a touchdown or an interception. And of course, we finally started to see this running game start to get going, right? It's really kind of been the Achilles heel for this team so far. Again, what is it, 36 carries, 160 yards, 4.4 per carry, with Durham, again, leading the way. If they can continue to run the football, they are going to be tough out here.
No question. And Durham has been a big part of this. He was the catalyst for the comeback in South Carolina.
Agreed.
That's when he announced himself to the world. And he's continued to get better. But I think the other thing, and this is sort of a chicken and egg thing, I'm not sure whether it started with him or not, but the offensive line is starting to play up to its billing in the last couple of weeks. It didn't do that for much of the season. It was a huge disappointment for much of the first month or so of the season. And now I think we started to see some dominant moments for the offensive
especially in the
line.
running game.
Yeah,
they've been pretty good
yeah.
in the past, in terms of protecting the passer. But yes,
you know, and that there are instances from time to time where you can see an offensive line blocking better when it believes the running back behind them can take advantage of what they're doing.
Yeah.
It may be subconscious. It may not even be a conscious thing, but it just seems to have that effect, cause and effect. And whatever the reason, the blocking, especially on the offensive line, and the talent of Caden Durham and the maturity he's showing as a freshman has made that running game a lot better. It's made them a more balanced team. The defense has made them a more balanced team, and boy, they're looking really good right now.
To your point, last drive for LSU, much like the last drive for Tulane, we're talking about in a minute. 14 plays, 80 yards, 8 minutes and 22 seconds taken off the clock. They basically sucked the life out of the game with that last drive. So LSU now, A&M at A&M, again, nationally televised game on ABC, as we mentioned. Open date next week, and then Alabama on the 9th. So again, that's the LSU upcoming schedule. All right, let's talk Tulane. They are Tulane beating Rice 24-10. They're 5-2. They're 3-0 in the American Athletic Conference. They had 3 votes in the coaches poll, none in the AP, which is really still shocking to me. Tulane has the longest conference winning streak in the country at 12. They're taking on North Texas. It's 5-2, 2-1 in the conference. That'll be an 11 a.m. game, ESPN2. I was surprised that again, there was this became so much of a defensive struggle. I knew Rice had a pretty good defense, but they really kind of held, again, the Tulane offense kind of in check early. Really wasn't until the fourth quarter when they really broke it open. Give me your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I think that was surprising. I don't think anybody expected it to be as defense-oriented as it was. But I think the key to the whole thing was that the Tulane defense rose to the occasion. When the Tulane offense was not having the type of game that they probably expected and generally have had, the defense just dominated with the takeaways. Did they have 2 defensive scores, I believe?
I know that. Yeah, I think they did. I know they had 1 for sure.
Okay.
Howard with the last.
Yeah, that put the game away.
Put it away.
But they had the takeaways. They dominated throughout, and so, yeah, it was a little surprising how that game went. But that's a good sign because it shows that Tulane can win in different ways, which was sort of a trademark under Willie Fritz. He was known more for his offense when he arrived, and yet during the better seasons they had toward the end, it was the defense that generally dominated. And now in John Summerall's first year, we're starting to see the same thing, where they can win with offense, they can win with defense, depending on what the game dictates.
Right. To your point, defense. 5 turnovers, 1 defensive touchdown, 8 tackles for loss, and so many quarterback hits on E.J. Warner, who again was tough as nails and crafty as a quarterback. But again, the defense continues to play well. The one drawback is, look, I love Remetich. This kid, I believe, out of your alma mater, Jesuit, right? Okay, I think he's going to be a pro guard, and he's had an incredible season this year. But again, really tough game for him. Again, he had 3 false starts. They had 5 penalties for 35 yards for the offense. Really self-inflicted mistakes that kind of slowed them down. But again, Hughes took over in the fourth quarter, and he's played so well. 140 yards on 27 carries, 1 touchdown, 100 yards in the second half. And as I mentioned, that final drive for Tulane, fourth quarter drive, 7 plays, 70 yards, took 4:28 off the clock, and slammed the door on Rice. One more point I want to add. I want to make. I got to give a shout out to Will Carroll, the punter. 6 kicks, 6 boots for him, 302 yards, 64-yard punt. He was constantly flipping the field for Tulane. Now, they had a little bit of a hangover, I thought, again, coming in off that bye against Rice. But again, good teams, they find ways to win, and you saw this team do it down the stretch in beating, again, a Rice team that, look, not a pretty good defense and a pretty good quarterback as well.
Yeah, that's a solid victory coming out of the bye week, and having to play a game in a manner that might not be the one you're most comfortable with, but you're still capable of doing. And when you can win the field position battle and your defense can dominate and you're able to play with a lead and then just let Hughes take over in the second half, not necessarily having to use him to establish an opportunity early in the game, but bring him in as a sledgehammer late in the game is a luxury. So this looks like a team that can win different ways. That we talked about LSU being more balanced on offense and overall. I think we're seeing that from Tulane. And there's a tremendous opportunity in front of this team.
No doubt. 70-yard drive on 7 plays, all runs with Hughes and Barnes. They just physically took it to Rice down the stretch there. I will say this, too many drops by Williams, which was, again, an issue. And, again, maybe that was, again, part of the focus. But, again, Tulane, again, at North Texas, at Charlotte next week, Temple at home, at Navy, Memphis to finish out the season. Tulane is, again, slowly but surely putting themselves in a position to be, again, in the American Athletic Conference Championship game. If they win that, they got a really good chance of being in the college football playoff.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about the way things set up for Tulane. Tulane controls its own destiny to a large degree. Somebody's got to take care of Boise State at some point.
Agreed.
So, and they have a tough game Friday night. They go to UNLV, who's like 6-1.
Right.
And they got I think it's Oregon State at the end. But you know, they can worry about that later. But for now, Tulane, they can take care of North Texas on Saturday.
Right.
They can take care of Navy. They can take care of Memphis on Thanksgiving night.
Navy play.
Army, Navy can take care of Army for them.
Right.
If not, then they're probably going to get Army in the conference championship,
game,
and they can
right.
take care of them.
Yes.
So, as far as the AAC goes, and if they're not playing Army in the championship game, that means Navy or somebody else took them out of the way.
That's right.
So Tulane controls its own fate to win the conference title and put themselves, I would assume at that point, they would be in a strong position
Have to be.
in the CFP rankings. But somehow they have to get past Boise State. And that's the one thing they don't control. But it's a great opportunity. All of those things I mentioned are doable.
Right.
Certainly. And I think Boise State is capable of losing. They're going to get a lot of attention. They have, a Heisman candidate as a running back. They've played very well. It's a good program. So we'll see. But we're nearing the end of October, and we're talking about really exciting things for the Tulane program.
All three teams are on the road this week. Of course, Tulane and LSU in Texas, Saints in California taking on the Chargers. And let me say this before we move off of Tulane. Those two losses, in my opinion, even though Oklahoma's starting to falter a little bit, will still be quality losses for this team. Again, because they were Power 4 teams. They played them early. It is a little frustrating, the loss to Kansas State, because that's one that they had. We would love to have seen that. But again, I do think in the big scheme of things, if they win out, they will be the representative for the group of 5 in the college football playoffs. If they don't, it's going to be a heck of an upset.
They have a good opportunity now. Somebody I think is going to have to be Boise. Boise does have one loss, but it was very close against Oregon.
Right.
So that's a quality loss, so to speak.
Agreed.
But if somebody else can take them out and Tulane keeps moving in the direction it's headed, they definitely have an opportunity to be that highest ranked team and get an automatic bid to the CFP. That's amazing.
Now the next thing is, come on, go to that architecture school at Tulane, which is one of the best in the country, and build that practice facility, build the parking lot, build a performance center, do it right there on Claiborne Avenue. Let's figure that out. Because again, Tulane program is on the rise right now, and the next round of conference realignment, they're definitely going to be a player if they can do that.
I think somebody already built you a soapbox.
There you go.
If I'm not mistaken, is that a Tulane architect?
My soapbox has always been there. Again, it goes from politics to sports. Now it's all sports. So All right, let's talk Pels. You ready?
Sure.
As we record this program, it is Wednesday afternoon. So again, the opener is tonight, again, against the Bulls. So again, please, anything we talk about when you're watching this on Thursday and Friday and into Saturday, realize that, again, this is a Wednesday taping. So, all right. Zion is ill, or was ill, missed practice yesterday as a game-time decision. Devontae Murray away from the team for personal reasons, supposed to be back in New Orleans today, had a family emergency. Both, again, are game-time decisions. Jose Alvarado, again, also was on the injury list. He had a car accident this morning. Christopher Dotson of Clutch Points was reporting that he was at the facility today, at the arena today, working out. So again, obviously, that was not, thankfully, that was not too severe of an accident. Trey Murphy also out, again, expected to be looked at, I believe, next week again, and they'll reevaluate him for maybe a return in November. He has also signed an extension of 4 years, $112 million. Again, no player option that takes effect next season. We'll get into that in a moment. Man, Will Gilly said this on my program yesterday from The Athletic. What a buzzkill it would be if, again, Zion and Murray are not available for the opener.
Well, yeah, I can already hear. Here we go again.
Right.
Okay. Zion's sick. Okay.
Right.
He might miss one game. He might not.
Right.
Okay. DeJounte Murray is not even. I hope, and I know we all hope that whatever the family emergency is resolved in a very positive manner. But it's not a season-ending injury. Okay. So. It would be a buzzkill, but it would be one that's probably going to be blown totally out of proportion.
Right.
82 games, okay? So, but because of Zion's history, he can have a hangnail and people are going to overreact to it. So, that would put a damper on things, but I'm more interested in seeing what they get out of the center position.
Amen. That's the season.
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole season in a nutshell.
I was at Media Day, and, David Griffin and Willie Green both said, well, we're going to figure it out. Well, and they probably will.
Right.
I'm sure they're going to figure out the best they can do with the group they have, and it may work out fine. I don't know, but there's a lot of uncertainty there. So that's the whole thing. DeJounte Murray was a huge addition in a handful of ways for them. That was tremendous. They didn't have to give up a starter to get him.
That's right.
David Griffin should get a statue for that trade.
Statue.
That's incredible. But, you know, and Zion, and then, you know, Ingram, of course, you don't know what his long-term situation is. There's a lot of moving pieces here. But the thing I'm most interested in starting out is what they do at center. And tonight against the Bulls is especially interesting because Billy Donovan has said he wants them to play faster and faster and faster, which I think is going to afford Willie Green the opportunity to go small and see what that looks like. Maybe Zion, if he plays, is the 5. Maybe Herb Jones is the 5 for a few minutes here and there. I think Messi probably gets a decent look. So right out of the gate, I think we're going to see a variety of options at the center position that Willie Green has been tinkering with. And to me, that's the whole first 20 games of the season, is figuring that thing out.
You know, I get that, Les, but at the same time, I think that there are 2 seasons in the NBA. There is the regular season and the postseason. And what works in the regular season doesn't necessarily work in the postseason. And they're touting Oklahoma City as the blueprint. Well, let's talk about Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City, one of the better teams in the NBA last year. Again, played without a true center, a true 5, and it worked in the regular season until the playoffs. When teams slow down, when again you need a true 5, when again things become more half court, that to me is going to be the interesting thing about where this team goes. The other thing is, again, this is a team now that ultimately is going to have to figure out again where do you place the egos, because they're talking about positionless basketball. They're talking about changing starting lineups. Some guys that are used to starting are going to be coming off the bench. Some guys that have been again that have played certain ways, like a Brandon Ingram, are now expected to play a different way. Can they check their egos at the door and again play as a team? Then the other part of it is you lost Najee, you lost Daniels, you lost Nance, okay, and you lost Valanciunas. Nance, Najee, and Daniels were again your energy coming off that bench along with Alvarado. What and who have you replaced that with?
Well, that's a lot of stuff for Willie Green to figure out.
And you got to figure it out in about 2 minutes, because that's all we got left.
Well, that ain't going to happen. But in the getting back to the center position at OKC, they're trying to thread the needle. Right. They're trying to, at times, play small, like OKC, but with Daniel Tice.
Right.
And also with the draft choice, Messi. They're also looking at the possibility of, not that Messi's really a traditional center, but he's a big, and Tice is more of a traditional center, although he can step away from the basket. They're trying to do both. They're trying to be able to maybe play a little more conventional, and be a little less conventional with the small lineup, and that's very challenging.
But Tice is not a legitimate big. I mean, he's more of a forward-playing center. Jemison's more of a forward-playing center. Makovic's more of a forward-playing center. Messi is a center, but again, he's a guy that needs a lot of seasoning.
Right. So but I don't think they're going to go small, and I'm not sure that's the best term, but use a non-traditional 5 the whole time. They're going to try and do both based on matchup, game situation.
100% agree.
But that's quite a challenge to try and pull that off over 82 games and be at your best for the playoffs.
And what do you do when you play Jokic and Embiid and some of the other big guys? You know,
that's why that's the most fascinating part of this. And then the other thing is, as you mentioned, the changing roles. You know, Brandon Ingram, for some reason, he may be the only player in the NBA who's reluctant to shoot more threes. You know, 1,000 players in the NBA want to shoot more threes, and he wants to shoot the mid-range all the time. So, you know, that's going to be something Willie Green said. I'm going to be on him all the time. Get your threes up, B.I. And then, you know, I think the key to this whole thing is, one of the keys to the whole thing is C.J. McCollum. He's a leader on the team. His role is going to change one way or another, but he's still going to be a leader, and he can show everybody else. This is how a professional accepts a different role and handles it for the betterment of the team.
Right.
He's very important.
Well, and that is a pro who wrapped it up in about 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Les, thanks so much for your time. As always, certainly appreciate you joining us on the program.
Thanks, Eric.
Les East, CrestLeeSports.com, Saturday Down South, and of course, again, fantastic author as well. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. So many ways to catch our program now. There's a QR code on your screen that'll take you again to the WLAE-TV YouTube page, also to my website, ericasher.com, where you can always watch our program. Again, you can watch us on Pelican Sports Television, again, WLAE-TV 2, also known as Encore, and of course right here on WLAE-TV. Also, again, catch me on the radio, 106.1 The Ticket. That's weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Anchor, Spotify is where you can find our podcast, but we're on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside New Orleans Show with Eric Asher. The Ticket has an app now. Download the app, 106.1 The Ticket app. You can take, again, the station, the show with you everywhere. And then, of course, as always, want to thank our underwriters who make this show possible. Each and every one of those underwriters, we appreciate them. Please continue your support for our great underwriters. And also, again, want to thank our friends here at WLE who produce our program and do an excellent job of doing that. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, Thomas Healy, and of course, the best director on the planet, William Hill. For Les East, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week on a brand new set on, again, on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.